everybody. It's Michelle here with Magnolia Grove Homestead. I hope y'all are having a great day. It's been a pretty busy day around here, but I wanted to come and talk to you about the fact that it is the beginning of spring and all of the big box stores, the hardware stores, the grocery stores, everybody is starting to pull all their plant starts out. And you might be tempted to run over to Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever and buy a whole bunch of things just because they're out and they're available for sale. However, there are 5 things that you really need to know before you start going and just grabbing plant starts from the shelf. So I tend to lean more toward starting all of my plants in my garden with seed. However, I understand that, not everybody wants to do that. It's a time commitment. It's a space commitment. You have to have room for all the seedlings and all the trays of things. And, you really need the right setup. You need grow lights or heat mats. You need shelving. You need all the little containers to put everything in. And when you start planting out a whole entire garden from seed, it takes a lot of those little containers. Like, they're everywhere. And so I get that, to me it seems like a better option just because I love flipping through a seed catalog and saying, I want this, 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 and like all this stuff that I can never find at the grocery store or whatnot. And to me it also seems cheaper just because you can get a ton of seeds in a pack for $3, or you can get like 4 little plant starts for $3. Depending on where you go, you might even only get one thing, and it most likely won't be this big. So, but then also if you start from seed, you do have to have a place to plant stuff, and you have to have that initial investment of all those little pots and all the soil and all the things. So, if you are somebody who is going to start your garden from plant starts, there are a few things that I think you should be mindful of. The first and foremost, you need to know when your last frost date is. So the last date in your area where there is a potential for frost. You can find that by just Google searching what is my last frost date and put in your zip code, and it will bring up a list of your first and last frost date. For my area, our last frost date is April 6th. And I say our last frost date because I don't hang my hat only on that last frost date. Farmer's Almanac, the meteorologists, like they're not God. And I have learned the hard way a couple years that just because it says April 6th does not mean that it won't still get too cold for tomatoes or peppers or something like that. So in addition to your last frost date, you also need to make sure that you watch the weather and check your 10-day forecast, and make sure after that frost date that there's within a 10-day span, there's not a night that it's going to drop below freezing. Because if there's a night that it's going to drop below freezing, you still will have frost. And your frost hinder things are going to suffer. Also, you need to know what is a cold hardy plant and what is a frost tender plant. Because not all plants have to wait until the last frost date to be planted. So we've talked about this several times in several videos, but just to cover it again and make sure that you really understand, some things can be planted and will actually thrive in cooler weather, and then other things are not. Y'all, I apologize, the wind is blowing and this frame on this greenhouse is just squeaking. There's not a whole lot I can do about it. So, your cold hardy plants are things like your brassicas, your broccoli, your cabbage, kohlrabi, things like that. Also your leafy greens like your kale, your collards, your spinach and lettuces, those kind of things, and your root vegetables like your radishes, your beets, your turnips, carrots. Those things are all fine in a light frost. Now, if it was going to be like 12 degrees tonight, I would be covering those things up because that is too cold. But if it's a light frost, it's fine. Actually, I'm probably going to cover them up anyway. I haven't been doing laundry out here in the greenhouse. I brought my stuff out just to cover some of my younger, more tender things. Then you need to know what your frost tender plants are. Those are things like your tomatoes, your peppers, your okra, squash, zucchini, eggplant, basil. Those things are frost tender, meaning if you put those things out in cold weather, they are going to die. They will not do good. They will not be healthy plants. The problem with it being the beginning of spring and all these stores putting out all these plant starts is that I literally found all this stuff at the same place. And so my pak choi and collards are fine in cold weather. However, my basil, my Roman tomatoes and German Johnson tomatoes, they are not okay in cold weather. And if you don't know the difference between what is cold hardy and what is frost tender, you might be tempted to go grab all these things and put them out in the garden because they were for sale from the garden center. And so they must be okay, right? Well, that's just not the case. If I put all this stuff out in the garden not knowing any better, then I would have killed more than half of what I just bought. And so you want to make sure that you know the difference between the two. The third thing that you need to keep in mind when you are thinking about going and buying started plants to plant in your garden is that you want to make sure that if you're paying for something, you want a valuable product, right? So you need to make sure that you are buying healthy plants. And by healthy plants, I mean you go around and look at the leaves and make sure that there's no like spotting. The stems are nice and healthy. Make sure that there's nothing broken. Make sure that your leaves are not discolored. I think these plants are all really healthy plants. Well, here's some stuff you can see. So this spotting on these leaves right here, y'all see that? That is most likely not really a disease. It's probably just that this plant needs some space to grow and it needs nutrition and it wasn't probably watered very well. And so you want to make sure that when you go and you purchase, I don't care if you're purchasing from the big box store or from the local nursery. I got all this stuff from the nursery. Make sure that you are paying for a valuable product. Make sure that you are buying healthy plants. Also, another thing to keep in mind when you're going to the store and you're buying started plants, make sure you look through them and see if you can get more bang for your buck. Sometimes you can look up and find something like I found with this basil. Now, there's 2 basil plants in these 2 cells right here. There's only one in these. This, I don't know why these leaves are like this. It looks like it got broken. My kids might have done that. But if you look through these plant starts and see if you can find things with like multiple plants, that's like free stuff. Usually you will only find stuff like this pak choi. There is 1 start per sale. And that's normal. But a lot of times, if you really look, you can find multiple things like this. There's 2 collard plants in this one cell, so I got a free collard plant. I mean, you know, it just really helps you to like stretch your dollar when you are paying more up front for these started plants. Another thing, the 4th thing to keep in mind when you are buying started plants, especially if you are very concerned about whether what you're growing is organic or not. You need to keep that in mind. Make sure that you look. None of these plants are labeled organic. I feel like it's fine. I know that when I bring these plants home and I put them out in my garden, I am going to raise them naturally. I'm not going to spray pesticides or chemicals or whatever on them. And so I don't necessarily follow organic only practices here, but I do follow natural growing practices. I don't use chemicals and pesticides and growth hormone things. I don't do all that. However, there is a chance that by me purchasing these, they could have been sprayed with something at the nursery. I don't know. I feel like when I put them in this good ground and the rest of the growing process is kept natural, I think that whatever gunk will work itself out. I don't know. I'm not overly concerned about that. But if you are, you want to make sure that you read the labels, read the tickets, and the tags, and make sure that they do say certified organic. Also, another thing to keep in mind, if you plan on buying only organic plant starts, just know that that is most likely going to limit the variety available to you to purchase. So already when you go to buy plant starts at a lot of the box stores and whatnot, your variety is limited. But then if you search only for organic, that kind of decreases how much stuff you have to choose from. So just be mindful of that. The fifth thing, which as a small business owner, maybe I take more to heart than other people might. But to me, it is extremely important to think about where you are going to purchase your plant starts from. If you go to some of the big box stores, grocery stores, big chain stores, whatever, they may have a limited selection of things for you to choose from. However, just know that most of those plants, first of all, are supplied by one national supplier. Their name is Bonnie. That's the name of the company. And I've got some of their stuff planted already. The broccolini and those little baby carrots, those were Bonnie plants. And while it's okay, you know, to go to those stores, I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying most of those plants are purchased from one national supplier. And by buying those plants, you are only supporting that supplier and those box stores. Whereas if you go to the local nursery or garden center or join garden groups and purchase from local growers, you are supporting your community and your local small businesses, which I feel like is important. Also, when you go to a big store and you buy started plants, usually there's a very limited selection of things that you can get. They have a few runs of things out in front of the garden center or whatever, and that's just all you have to choose from. Whereas if you go to a nursery or you search on like your local garden groups, Facebook pages, whatever, usually you are going to be more apt to find a much larger variety of things to grow, as well as you're highly more likely to find heirloom varieties of things, which is important if you're thinking about, well, maybe next year I might start from seed. If it's at all a thought, you might want to consider purchasing heirloom starts. That way you can save seeds from the things that you grow, and you can grow those seeds next year. Another thing to keep in mind when purchasing from these big stores versus a nursery is that the plants, typically speaking, are going to be more cared for and better nurtured at a nursery or a garden center or somewhere where This is their business, to raise these plants and provide the public with healthy plants. Whereas if you go to, I don't know, Walmart or anything, Lowe's, Home Depot, any of those places, they're just, the workers are just so busy, and they may have, you might have somebody that's in charge of things in the garden center and the toys and the automotive center and the grocery. Like, there's just no telling what all responsibilities somebody might have. And if it's not their sole responsibility to provide care to these plants, then some things may be looked over. They might not be watered as much. Something might become diseased and they don't see it because they don't have time to sit and inspect every leaf. Like, that's not their only job. And so you want to make sure that you think about stuff like that before you just run and buy whatever's on the shelf at the closest, big box store to you. Also, one last thing to keep in mind is that I'm a budget person. Like, I am tight-wadded. My husband will tell you I am cheap. Like, I look for bargains everywhere I go. But I have heard and always believed for a long time that if I started plants in a nursery, I was going to spend twice as much on those plants as I would if I went to a big box store. And that is actually not true. I just want to fix that myth right now. That is not true. There are certain things at the nursery that are more expensive than if I went and bought them at a big box store. But the started plants I have found are pretty much, they're either the same price, or sometimes the nurseries will run a sale because they're trying to move that product so that they can bring in new seasonal stuff, and they will run a sale and they'll actually be cheaper. And so you want to make sure that you price compare if that's a concern for you. But I don't want you to feel like you have to go to a big box store and purchase your plants because it's going to be cheaper rather than going to the nursery and looking around. So in conclusion, I just want to make sure that you guys know, if you are not in a position to start your garden from seed, if you just don't want to go through the trouble, because it is a lot more work, of starting your garden from seed, and you want to go and start your garden from started plants, which there's nothing wrong with. You can still grow your food from started plants. Don't let anybody make you feel bad about it, or feel like you're taking the easy way out, you're cheating, whatever. I used to feel that way. I don't anymore. I just don't care. Some stuff I'll buy started, and most stuff I plant from seed just because I enjoy the process. And I feel like there's a lot of learning to be done. But that's just my personal choice. But if you do start your garden from started plants, be sure that you keep all the things that we covered in mind. Know where you're going. Know, what to look for. What time is it really? Is it really time to buy this? And if it's not time to buy this and put it outside, then where am I going to put it? If I don't have anywhere to put it, I don't need to buy it yet. I can wait, and it'll be there when it is time. And just keep in mind, like, what you're purchasing, that you're purchasing healthy plants. Your money is going into this, and you want to make sure that you spend it wisely. So make sure that you look at all the leaves of all your plants. And, think about bang for your buck. Don't forget that your money is valuable. You earned it, and your food is valuable. Your time spent in your garden raising these plants up is valuable. So you make sure that you just make good choices and be mindful when you go. Don't just grab everything because it's on the shelf. That wind is getting pretty crazy, and the temperature is dropping. I can feel it even in the greenhouse. So I am going to take my sheets and pillowcases and go out and start covering stuff up that needs to be covered up tonight. But if you guys have any questions, if you have any more tips about, how to choose different transplants or whatever, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you enjoyed or got any value out of this video, I would appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to my channel, because it would really help me out and help me grow. And until I see you again, have a great day and God bless.